Hello, welcome to the Sovereign Collective. This is week 4 of July, and tonight we will be talking about the stories we repeat that shape the life that we are experiencing. And it's good to be here again. Life has been wonderfully disruptive these last few weeks between my health issues and being in the hospital and then packing up my life to leave Utah and preparing to begin this pilgrimage tomorrow. I'm actually already left Utah and I'm in California, staying at my brother's house, and my brother is the one who offered me the opportunity to use his RV. It's a 30-foot motorhome and take it wherever I wanted to. And so I have felt really called to go, and like the Pacific Northwest, it's always just lived in me this the beauty of the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I was raised in the East Bay in Walnut Creek, and I didn't spend a lot of time north of San Francisco on the coast. I'd heard about Fort Bragg and Mendocino, but I never really went there. I've been to Muir Woods several times, but I've never been up into the redwoods. I know I was there as a baby, but so I'm following this pull, this call to go and just take my time, let the road take me. I'm going up the PCH, up to Canada, but I'm going to take a couple months to just to be in nature and kind of in solitude. This is a solo journey, and I feel very called to it. So I'm sharing it. And our topic tonight, I want to speak about it. It's kind of a personal thing as I sat with this because I've become more aware over these past few years of how this actually has functioned in my life. The stories that we live in our world of words. The stories we tell ourselves, the things we have come to believe about ourselves create the reality that we're living in. And that's what I want to speak to tonight because it has become increasingly um, like I've just noticed how much my beliefs have shaped how I've lived. And so we're going to speak, and I have some questions for you as we go into this to contemplate, like, could it be true that the reality that I'm living today is just an accumulation of the things I have come to believe are true about myself? And when we believe those stories for so long, it kind of shapes who we believe that we are. So, um, ironically, everything that's happened has become that, like, to me, in these last even weeks of kind of building up to being here and getting ready to leave, it's a perfect backdrop for tonight's conversation. So tonight isn't about changing your story. It's really about becoming more aware of the story that you have been living. So I grew up in a family of 7 children. I'm number 6 of 7 children. And somewhere along the way, and no one ever actually said this to me, but I came to believe that my needs didn't really matter. And I think I learned that it was easier for me if I stayed quiet, and easier if I didn't ask for too much, and easier if I wasn't a burden. I being right where I was in in the dynamics of my family, it really that really became my story. And no, this is what's important. This is important to note because no one ever said this to me. No one said those exact words, like just be quiet or go away. No one ever treated me like that. I brought this on myself. I simply just came to believe this. And because I believed this, this story quietly became the lens through which I have experienced my life. And I've sat with this, and there's been a lot of compassion for that little girl who came to believe that story without ever questioning it. Because if I'm really honest, it has shaped how I have shown up in my relationships, in my ability to have boundaries or not, in my business, in my willingness to be seen, even in my business. For years, I've had something meaningful to share, and yet I've held back, not because I lacked something, but because something inside of me, or somewhere inside of me, there was this story that said it was safer to stay small. And so, I don't know if this has been part of your story. On some levels, as I work with people, this is a common theme that my needs don't matter, or I'm not lovable, or I'm different, or something's wrong with me, or I'm not safe. There's a version of this story living in almost all of us. In fact, I have yet to meet someone where a theme like unto this, isn't playing out for a certain amount of time because as children, our parents aren't perfect. And we don't know that though. So if they dismiss us or they aren't available to us in the ways that we would need, and every child is different, we talked about this last time, that every child, even if there's just two children, same parents, same family, as they get older and you ask them about their childhood, it's going to be very different experiences. So I don't know if my other siblings came to believe this about themselves, but we all came to believe something. And I don't think that's random. I think it's part of why we're here. We are here to live in the contrast. So when I say that, I mean, how do we ever know what we really want in life or how we want to show up and be unless we've experienced the opposite? So for me, believing on some level deeply, and this is the thing I want to say too, I never was aware that I actually felt that way. And it's not until recently that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a story that I came to believe in. It's so subconscious. I never was like, oh, well, my needs don't matter. I never thought that, but it's how I was showing up in all the ways. I wanted to move my business forward. I wanted to share things on social media, but I was too shy. I would call it shy, right? Oh, I'm shy. But if I'm really honest, it was comfortable because I didn't want to step outside of the box of what I believed was true about me and actually show up in a new way. So let's talk about the science of this, because the science of this is fascinating. Our brains aren't simply observing reality, they're constantly predicting it. Every moment, our brain is asking, based on everything I've learned before, what is most likely to happen next? It's almost as if it's taking all the information that has happened already, and because it likes things familiar, it doesn't like change so much, it will seek out the common thread. Like, oh, that's probably going to happen again because that's been happening in the past. So it reduces our brain reduces uncertainty and it actually is very incredibly efficient. But if somewhere along the way I came to believe my needs don't matter, my brain didn't simply store that as a memory, it began predicting my life through that lens. Can you see how that works? So there's no one to blame here. We're not going to blame our families. We're not going to blame ourselves. It's just that's when I say this, I realize, and I've sat with enough clients now, this isn't just a personal thing, this is collective. We are all experiencing this on some level in order to understand what we're not. I am not someone whose needs don't matter, and I can see that now. And also, this is a discussion for another night. But if I'm seeking that validation and love and worthiness from anything outside of me, whether it be my parents. And as kids, we do this, that's normal. But as adults, when we finally start to turn towards ourselves and get to know ourselves better, then we have more capacity to understand I can meet my needs. I can show up for myself. I can stop hiding. And when we suffer enough believing a lie, this is the other thing. I'm sorry, I'm all kind of all over the place, but this all goes together like a puzzle. If our true nature is that we are abundant and we are love and we are not disconnected from source, then if we are ever suffering, we must not be living in our truth. So if we feel like we're suffering, it's time to ask questions. And the questions maybe aren't, why does this keep happening? It's like, what must I believe that keeps me living in this same experience? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're more aware that we have a choice. We have a choice to question, is it true that my needs don't matter? And then we can go from there. So, my brain all that time was quietly predicting experiences that fit my story. My needs don't matter. And then something remarkable happens. We have a part of our brain called, it's the RAS, the reticular activating system. Its job is to filter millions of pieces of information every second. It's always aware, it's always taking stock of everything that's happening all around us. It decides what deserves our attention. Because there's too much to take in, it will actually focus in on, guess what? Patterns, familiarity, evidence that supports what we already believe. So, if you are thinking about buying a new car, suddenly you see that car everywhere. If you're looking for a red Honda and you're like, oh, I really like red Hondas, guess what you start seeing? Because your brain is trying to support you, the thing you're thinking about and the familiar thing. And you wouldn't have noticed it before, but now that you've drawn attention to it, those cars suddenly are in your awareness. They weren't just, they were there all along, but now your attention changed. Do you see how that works? So our beliefs work exactly the same way. Okay. So I want to explain. Joe Dispenza does a wonderful job talking about this, but there's a little piece that's missing in this that if we are, he talks about our thoughts, right? Our thoughts create our emotions, create our actions, and then our reality and our personality become shaped by those things. But it really stems back to what we believe because subconsciously, everything that we think, everything, how we react, how we respond to life around us is based on our beliefs. And it's 95% happening below our awareness. And we aren't aware. Like I said, I wasn't aware that I was like, oh, my beliefs, or not my beliefs, my matters, my needs don't matter. Sorry, it's late and it's hot here in California. Um, Okay, so if I believe that and I'm not aware that I believe it, I'm suffering. Can you see how that happens? I'm not going to say I suffered my whole life, but there has been a quiet story building, shaping my experiences, and I didn't even know it. So I'm going to walk through this. So I'm going to use myself as an example, and I invite you, if you have a core belief that you have become aware of that's similar to what I have explained about what I came to believe, let's do this together. So if I believe my needs don't matter, my brain predicts that I will be overlooked. My attention notices every moment that seems to confirm it. I feel small. I stay quiet. Other people don't know what I need, and my experience appears to prove my belief. So the loop is the belief, my needs don't matter, and then the mind predicts, okay, Your needs don't matter. So now I'm going to pay attention through the RAS system that I'm going to find all the supporting evidence that I am a person whose needs don't matter. Okay. So now I'm giving attention. My brain is finding all the evidence for me. And I'm not even aware of it because it lives below my awareness that it's actually seeking this confirmation. Then, once I find the evidence and it's all coming at me, how does that make me feel? Because this is when our emotions get involved. Our beliefs create our thoughts, create our emotions, and then we take action. Well, my needs don't matter, and that makes me feel really, I'm suffering now. Can you see that? So, my action is I must play small. That's the familiarity. That's the thing I've become familiar at. If I was one of seven, I needed to kind of play small because I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. And then I played that through my whole life. So my experience of life just reinforces the belief that I'm not even aware that I have. That is the loop. So the loop is it just keeps completing itself. And then I'm like, see, I'm a person whose needs don't matter. So when I can finally slow it down and say, time out, I don't like feeling like my needs don't matter. I don't like feeling small or like I need to hide. How has that served me? It's kept me from my fullest life, having relationships that actually mirror back that I have needs and they have needs and we meet each other's needs instead of just dismissing my needs and supporting theirs all the time. So, um, yeah, just because we have been collecting evidence, but years collecting evidence to prove the belief does not make it true. When we are suffering, notice your nervous system. When you start to feel really crappy in your life, in your lived experience, get curious, have compassion, turn towards the part of you that maybe feels, well, the suffering part. Why am I suffering? Why do I feel gross? Well, let me turn towards that. And maybe she or he has something to say because I came to believe when I was younger, ah, it fits that story. Of course, I came to believe that growing up in a large family or something like unto that. Even if we weren't in a large family, this happens. Even if we were an only child, it happens. So, one of the most powerful questions we can ask isn't, why does this keep happening to me? It's, what must I believe to keep experiencing life this way? And that question changes everything. When you can be more still to be able to tune in to your subconscious and become more subconscious dominant, like, what is it? If I'm experiencing this, what is the evidence of my story? You'll find it if you slow down and ask those questions and be really honest, really honest. How have I been showing up in my relationships? How do I show up at work? How do I show up in my family with my children? How do I show up with myself? These are the questions that we stay really busy not asking. And that's the work that I do is helping people slow down enough to stop abandoning themselves and to get curious and to become more compassionate for yourself because there's no blame if you ever came to believe a story that isn't true. That's kind of why we're here as humans, to experience what we're not so we can finally so now I'm going on this solo journey and there's a part of me that was like, I want to share this. I want to share this movement inside of me where I'm shifting from believing that my needs didn't matter to finally saying, wait a minute, what if I have something that I came here to say and it lives deeply in me? Am I going to keep silencing myself? How does that serve other people by playing small? Have you ever felt this way? That it would just be better if you're quiet or hiding? I feel like I've been hiding pieces and parts of myself for a very long time. So I'm finally stepping out of that space of believing that my needs don't matter and that I don't have anything important to say. And I'm sharing it. I'm starting to document this journey. And the feedback is really beautiful. Maybe there's going to be people who are haters. And you know what? I can't worry about that because there's always going to be people that are negative. And it doesn't mean that that doesn't mean anything about me. That's their stuff. And I understand that now. So it makes it easier to just freely and honestly and lovingly share some of the lessons I've learned on this journey that's been wild and beautiful. Um, and if it can help anyone else, then I've served the way that I feel like I'm here to do. And that has shifted my energy. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that if now, finally, I'm waking up to the fact that that was living underneath my awareness for a very long time. And now I get to have compassion for myself and step outside of that and see what happens, see what magic arrives. So, we were talking about the question to ask is, what must I believe to keep experiencing life this way? And that question changes everything because if I don't like the reality I'm experiencing, if I'm suffering in any way, I can follow the thread backwards, not to blame myself or my family, but to become curious. What story have I been living inside of? I've said this before. Peter Crone does great work around subconscious freedom work and subconscious beliefs. And he has this thing that he says that humans are addicted to the idea, the story of ourselves. We're so addicted to it that we never question it. We just believe it and we keep living it and we suffer thinking that that suffering is just part of life, but it is not because our true nature is not suffering. So, to follow that thread back, to become curious, what story have I been living inside of? Where did it come from? Does it still belong to me? And is it actually true? So, how do we know if it's true or not? If we are suffering in any way, it can't be true. And that's when everything starts to deconstruct and dissolve because you're like, oh my gosh, if I'm that powerful to create a life based on a lie and have that much suffering, can you imagine how powerful I can be if I step into my truth, stop hiding, and live my best life, knowing that that old way is not true. It never served me. So, awareness. The beautiful thing is this: awareness doesn't immediately change our reality, it changes the observer. So, and when the observer changes, what we notice begins to change. What we notice influences what we feel, and what we feel influences how we respond. And over time, the life we experience begins to literally change. I don't believe our beliefs magically create reality. I do believe they profoundly shape the way we perceive, interpret, and respond to it. And that changes everything. So, I have some questions for you tonight. If you're here tonight or you're watching this later, um, what story about yourself have you been carrying for so long that it feels like the truth? What story about yourself have you been carrying so long that it actually feels true? That's a doozy. Because if we've never asked that question, we may have something to discover. Second question: where do you see that story influencing your relationships, your work, or the way you speak to yourself, even? Where do you see that story influencing your relationships, your work, and even the way you speak to yourself, or even speaking to your loved ones? What evidence has your mind become especially good at collecting? Remember, we talked about it keeps predicting and it likes familiarity and it's going to find the same story that we've been telling ourselves. So, what evidence has your mind become especially good at collecting? And all you have to do is look at your life, look at your experiences. There's your story played out. If that story wasn't completely true, what else might be possible? I'm going to reshape that question. What becomes possible when you finally realize that that story was never true? That's what I feel like I'm experiencing now. I'm finally stepping into the possibility of being someone who can speak their truth with so much love and let it reach the people that it resonates with. And I know my message doesn't resonate with everyone. It probably resonates with very few, but that's okay. I am not here to be grand and large. I'm here to share messages that feel really deeply personal and yet collective, like archetypal. Um, so I'm about to begin this journey that I don't have all the answers to. And maybe that's exactly the point. The pilgrimage isn't asking me to become this new Noelle. It's inviting me to become more aware of the stories I've been living inside of and to consciously choose which ones I want to take with me as I move forward. Maybe awareness isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's the beginning of authorship, authority. When we take back our authority, it's not taking back this thing because our ego feels a way like we have to defend ourselves and we're the authority and we can't let anyone else. It's no, when I say that, I mean, when I say authority, I mean authorship, that I now am authoring my experience, my life, because I stopped believing a story that wasn't true. That's authorship. And one last sentence I want to leave with you. Your brain isn't committed to the truth. It's committed to what is familiar. And awareness is what gives you the freedom to question whether what feels familiar is actually true. Just because you've been living in it for so long does not make it true. And I am here as a witness to say that has been my story without me even knowing it was my story. And I teach this stuff, I study this stuff, and it still just lived in the back corner, hidden somewhere. And now that I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious now. It's so obvious. And that's okay. That's okay. Because living in the contrast of anything brings us finally with awareness to the other side of it, where I can live free from believing a lie. So, thank you for being here tonight. I hope, I wish, I would love for you to follow the Buffalo Queen, follow this journey that I'm on. It feels special, it feels important, or it wouldn't live in me and be calling me to go explore what it's like to be out on my own. Yes, I've done that before, living abroad alone and doing all of that. This feels different though. I don't know why, but I don't know who the people I'll meet or the experiences I'll have, but I know it's going to be magical because that is one thing I do know. I've had enough experience around taking leaps and being held in, there's always a feather bed. There's a Terrence, it's actually a quote that is, it's given to Terrence McKenna, but then people say, no, I don't know that he actually said this, but it's nature loves courage. And I don't know the whole quote, it's quite long, but at the very end, he says, you take the leap and you find out that there always is a feather bed. And I love that because that has been my experience. I've taken a lot of leaps and in my life since my divorce, maybe my whole life. Maybe I'm just like compartmentalizing it, but it's, I've always been guided. That's one thing I realize. I've always been guided and I've always been held. And I venture to guess that's probably your story too. Okay. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you next week, and we finish up the series in July. Um, and then I haven't thought about how I want to move forward with August, but I'll let you know. Stay tuned. Ciao.